Okay, I'd like to call this September meeting of the Johnson County Library Board of Directors to order. First on the agenda is citizen comments. And Sean, do you have any to report? Sean, you there?
John, I think you're still muted.
How is that?
There you go.
Okay. Let me just pull it up here. And so this comes from, there's a comment from Andrew Cross. And Andrew says, can library consider reducing staff and shuttering a location in the same manner that private businesses are having to shutter their doors? Library has vastly reduced services and will not have public or school events on site. Why is board conducting a retreat while whole sectors of the economy are still closed? Are these criteria for library to assume service as normal from before the virus shut down? Or is the library going all virtual, which has almost no need for physical books, locations, and most staff? Let me just see if I can go through, because there are some really specific things, and normally we don't answer, but there may be just general information that's useful to the public here. The library has reduced hours at the moment because we have reduced staff. We are operating at about 75% of staffing capacity. What we're continuing to do is try to keeping all of our locations open to allow people to come in and get books. We've had some of our administrative team actually doing shelving at Leawood Pioneer to help with backlog, but we're down to bare bones staffing, but we want to keep the doors open and keep services. The library has vastly reduced services, and this is true as far as the programming and meeting rooms, but while the COVID has been going on, the library has also enhanced services. So as before, we've never traditionally had curbside service, and that's something that we've added. We've also continued to look at providing different types of online services and expanding that. We continue to offer computing services, and we're continuing to offer books at all locations, which is what the public has told us that they want. Why is the board conducting a retreat? The board annually has a retreat. Though not required by policy, I believe, it is required so we can review our capital library master plan and our strategic plan, and it allows the library leadership to report back to the board on how we're meeting our strategic goals, and then setting up the next year for new areas that the board would like to see us focus. Are there criteria for the library to resume services as normal before the virus shut down? And that really comes down to the state and the department. The state, local commissioners, and the Department of Health, both at the state level and the Department of Health and Environment at the county level. Those are the authorities for restoring full services to the library, and we continue to see high levels of infection rates within the county. Is the library going virtual? What we're trying to do is provide services. Some of those will be virtual, whether it's a story time or book clubs or writers conference or Elementure. But the need for physical books is still there because people are wanting to have both access to electronic information, but also people still want to have access to the physical books. I hope, Mr. Cross, that answers all your questions and maybe fills in some gaps for public that may be watching this live or watching this later at some time. That was the only comment that I had to report to the board.
Okay, thank you, Sean. Next, I have an update on the closed captioning. Last month, we introduced a live closed captioning service in order to expand access to our library board meetings. To use the service today, please click on the CAP app, that's C-A-P, capital A-P-P, link posted in either the chat or video description. You'll also see a link to a short survey about your experience with closed captioning. Whether you have tried it or not, your feedback is very important to the Johnson County Library and the library board. Next we have, oh, I'm sorry, I'm skipped over the members of the Johnson County Library Board of Directors. Does anybody on the board have anything they'd like to say?
Just a quick comment. Would it be, I'm sorry, this is Wayne Burke. I appreciate the hours that we're open and everything that people is doing to make that available to the public. Would it be possible to, on our websites, to change the hours? I know I've gotten some people have commented that they went to a library thinking that it was open and that it's closed because of the new hours. So if that's something that we could look at and consider, I'd appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Wayne. We'll make that happen. That was something I was unaware of. So absolutely, we'll change the hours on the website to reflect the hours of operation. I thought that that had been done on the homepage, but if you were going to an actual library location and those hours haven't been changed, then I can understand that that would be it's kind of misinformation. So we'll get that changed as soon as we can.
Thank you, Sean. They weren't really complaining too much other than the fact that they appreciated it being open, but if you make a trip somewhere and it's closed, it's kind of frustrating. But they were very appreciative of the hours we are open and the people that are doing the work. So thank you, Sean.
Thanks, Wayne.
Thanks, Wayne. Anybody else have anything? All right, moving on. Friends of the Library, written report by Karen Risto. Is she here or?
I am here.
Okay, good, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the board and Commissioner Hanslick and Mr. Casserly for this time to report on Friends' progress during the last 30 days. In addition to the work with Sean on a subject later in your meeting, there are 3 subjects in this report today: courier review, internet sales, and in-kind donations from Friends. First of all, courier review. The Friends rely on couriers to move material around the branches in our headquarters at Pine Ridge. We annually receive more than 555,000 weeded and donated items, which pass through hands of librarians, volunteers, staff, and couriers before ending up online or at one of our bookstores. Our current vendor is closing shop at the end of the year. The library circulation team is assisting us in reviewing our processes and refining our search for a replacement within current budget allowance. Next is internet sales. In the month of August, we shipped 1,541 items with an average per item price of $13.20. These sales are conducted through multiple listing sites, including Amazon, eBay, ABE, Biblio, and Al Libris bookstores, or books, sorry. Our new listing software lists fewer overall items, but we are seeing about 80% sale rate among items listed. As soon as we are able to list more total items, I am confident we'll see sales increase online. Significant internet sales were Starman Omnibus 3 for $248.47. And I Was There, Pearl Harbor and Midway for $132.77. And the Expedient Homemade Firearms for $102.89. Lastly, in-kind donations from Friends of Johnson County Library in support of JCL programs and outreach services. This activity has slowed somewhat due to pandemic shutdowns, but we are still actively supporting librarians and programs. Through the first 6 months of the year, we provided almost 500 individual children and adults books, instructor review textbooks, and more to librarian facility programs with Johnson County Department of Corrections Therapeutic Community Library, Johnson County Department of Corrections Adult Residential Center, and Johnson County Library Latino Services Outreach. let's see. We also had provided 7 boxes with approximately 40 items each of mass market paperbacks to Program Department, Sheriff's Office, Johnson County Detention Center for the monthly book exchange, as well as 244 advanced reading copies to book clubs at Blue Valley, Cedar Row, Corinth, Gardner, Lenexa City Center, Oak Park, Spring Hill, and Shawnee libraries.
Does anybody have any questions for Karen? All right, thank you, Karen.
Thank you very
Appreciate your
much.
report. Next up is the Johnson County Library Foundation report by Stephanie Stolzheimer.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's really fun to follow Karen because we have a little announcement that we want to share that has something to do with the Friends. So before I give my regular report, I want to introduce a special guest, Vicki Trott. Vicki Trott is the Foundation's board president, and I'm just going to turn it over to her. I know she's here with us. So Vicki,
I'm
are you
here.
good to go? All right, so Vicki's good to go. She's going to share some news with you.
I may be preempting Sean's presentation later in this meeting, but I want to let you know that the Library Foundation Board held a special board meeting on Tuesday to hear Sean's presentation regarding the Friends of the Library's proposal for the Lackman Building. After reviewing the business and strategic plan and hearing Sean's proposal and discussion by the Foundation Board, we unanimously voted to support the Friends proposal with a grant of $100,000 contingent upon approval of the proposal by the Library Board and the Board of County Commissioners. The Friends of the Foundation are sister organizations whose missions are to support the library. Supporting the library is also supporting each other in doing our individual organizations' work. So now I'll turn it back to Stephanie to continue with the remainder of the Foundation's report. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Vicki. she sort of casually drops the $100,000 donation part. I will just say Vicki's leadership is really remarkable. She's a past Friends board president. She's involved in the community in so many different ways besides the library, and we're so lucky to have her. And she has really helped guide and counsel us as the foundation went through this process to make this vote. And so I'm grateful for her, and the board is very in support of the Lackman Friends initiative. So thanks, Vicki, so much. Yep. So unless you have any questions for Vicki.
So no, I just want to say I want to thank Vicki for going through this and listening to it. I want to also thank the rest of the foundation for reading the business case, and then also for kind of come back with the hard-hitting questions on why and how we got to those numbers. They really did, I think, due diligence on it. But it was also a tremendous amount of work that all the foundation members did, because the business plan is 72 pages, and they read through it, digested it, and then kind of came back and had questions about specific areas. And I just want to say, everyone on the foundation is a volunteer, and I really am grateful for the time and effort that they put in, and the generosity to support the Friends, contingent, of course, on the library board and the BOCC also going and approving this. So thank you on behalf of the library, and I want to say, and probably behalf of the Friends, Vicki, I want to say thank you.
Well, and just one more note to all of this is we felt like that the foundation, it's not only the money, but it's the foundation takes great responsibility in being fiduciary representatives of the donors to the foundation. So we have thousands of donors, and they take that responsibility seriously. So this kind of a gift, I hope it speaks volumes for how we believe that the community in our philanthropic area supports this initiative. And with that said, I know there are a lot of other considerations, but we're hoping that this helps as you start to deliberate on making the decision about the Friends Lackman initiative. Okay, so with that, I'm going to go ahead and just report out on the rest of the foundation information. You've got it in front of you. I'll go through it. We've received some grants. We had a $4,000 grant from Village Presbyterian for adult incarcerated services. And we received a $10,000 grant from the Freedom's Frontier National Heritage Foundation for Race Project KC. These are both really important funders. It's always great to receive this kind of support. It just exponentially shows that the community is supporting the work that the library is doing. I'll talk a little about summer reading. I also wanted to show how the community is supporting summer reading. We recently did a disbursement for books for $27,500+. That disbursement bought $5,500. And it just takes a number of community funders to want to support this program, and they do. And so we have Walmart, Dollar General. We have a giving circle that's headed by Ann Walter, who's a past board president, the Flarsheim Foundation, Friends of the Library, and Library Lets Loose. There are just a number of funders come into this program, and they love it, and they are helping fund it to the tune of a nice dollar amount. Library Lets Loose is upon us. It's this Saturday, so we're very excited. It's September the 12th. The virtual reception starts at 6:30. Come early. You'll learn how to make the Let Loose juice. And it's free. It's free to come. So we're promoting it as a free event. And we couldn't do it without the sponsors. We have 44 sponsors this year. And last year we had 44 sponsors. We just didn't know if we'd have the level of support, and we just have. It's very impressive. So we have other sources of income besides sponsors. We have mail-in donations from the invitation. We have online donations from Eventbrite. Those online donations already total $5,000, which is just great support from the community. It should be a fun event. We have a lot of different things going on, and I hope you'll register to come. Just go to libraryletsloose.org and you can sign up, and we'll get you signed up. If you have any questions about Library Lets Loose, let me know. And otherwise, that concludes my report.
Anybody have any questions for Stephanie? I'm looking forward to the event this Saturday.
It should be fun.
Yeah,
Thanks, everybody.
Will they just send out a Zoom link, or how's that work?
Well, it's okay. So the foundation has, through the online programming, we did some fundraising to help fund this, but we got this On24 platform. It's a very nice platform, and it's going to be used for a lot of library online programming going forward. Anyway, we're one of the first events on the library's On24 platform. So it's on that, but I will send you a link. You will be getting a link very soon, because I know a number of you have already registered. You'll be getting a link very soon.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I can't wait.
I know. Thank you.
Thanks, Stephanie.
You're welcome.
Next, we have our liaison from the Board of County Commissioners, Janae Hanslick. Janae, are you here?
I am here. Thank you, Amy. Just some very brief remarks today. We did have 3 items at this morning's county commission meeting that relate to the library. These are all items that are going to be acted upon next week, so they were on agenda review. The first one was combining what we call the CRP and the MLP projects at the Central Resource Library to provide for more efficient use of the time and money. Basically, and Sean may want to go into more detail about this, but basically doing some additional work on our coolers and the HVAC system at the same time that we're doing the master library plan work for the efficiency of that. The second item was, and this is exciting, to approve the property conveyance agreement between Johnson County Library and the City of Merriam. So that's a very exciting thing. And even more exciting is next week, we will be acting to authorize the issuance of revenue bonds to construct, equip, and furnish a library building in Merriam. So we are on our way with the library in Merriam. So that's quite exciting. Then I wanted to also say I'm very much looking forward to Library Let's Loose. In fact, I was over at Central Resource Library 2 days ago. I tend to go there about once a week, and I looked around. I have to admit I was a little sad that we wouldn't be having the event there, but I'm glad we'll still be able to see each other virtually. And finally, I wanted to just mention that I just finished rereading a very special book from my childhood. And if you have not read it, I highly recommend this absolutely delightful book. If you don't remember it, it's called My Side of the Mountain by Jean Craighead George. And as a little girl, I just fell in love with this book. It was originally written in 1959, just a couple of years before I was born. But if you have not read it or you haven't read it to your children, it's a story of a boy who does what we all have dreamed of doing, and that's running away to the woods and living on his own in the forest. It's just a terrific book. So pick it up again if you haven't read it for a long time. And that's the end of my report, unless there are any questions.
Anybody have any questions for Commissioner Hanslick?
Okay, well, thank you.
Thank you. All right, moving on, we have Board Counsel Fred Logan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to suggest that I do the first part of my report on the Kansas Open Records Act, and then maybe defer the second part on explanation of the bond documents until we're actually ready to take action on them under board action, if that's okay. Is that all right, Madam Chair?
That'll be fine.
Great. So let me first of all talk about, staff has asked that I talk about the Kansas Open Records Act with members of the board. Periodically, the library will get a request under the Kansas Open Records Act for records of one kind or another. And the statute defines a public record as meaning any recorded information, regardless of form, characteristics, or location, which is made, maintained, or kept by or is in the possession of any public agency or an officer or employee of that public agency. So it is a very broad definition. Of course, over the years, that changes quite a bit. I mean, 35 years ago, we were talking about paper documents. Now we're talking about electronic documents, but the obligation, regardless of how the record is kept, is the same. And that is to turn it over if there's a request, and there's not an exception. Now, having said that, you need to know that there are 55 exceptions in the statutes, and 2 of those apply to libraries. One of those exceptions reads, and it's very important, that one of the exceptions is library patron and circulation records which pertain to identifiable individuals. So you all know that patron confidentiality is considered to be one of the bedrock principles of the Johnson County Library. And that really is embedded in state statute as well. So somebody could not come in and say, you know, I want to know what so-and-so is reading and file an Open Records Act request. Well, that would be rejected immediately because those are patron and circulation records that pertain to identifiable individuals. And staff is pretty good. I mean, not pretty good. They're very careful about respecting that. There's also a reference to libraries on library, archive, and museum materials contributed by private persons to the extent of any limitations imposed as conditions of the contribution. So it would be possible, for example, for a person to say, I'm going to turn over my records. This may be an elected official, but the condition is that they not be released for 10 years. And that would be perfectly acceptable then, and that would be honored. So I think that gives you a pretty good review of the Kansas Open Records Act. We don't get a lot of requests, but occasionally we'll get one. So that, I think, completes my report unless there are questions about the Kansas Open Records Act. Okay, thank you. I'll complete the rest of the report when we get to the action items.
Thank you, Fred. Next up is the county librarian report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to invite David Ferratney to come up and give the financial report, followed by then Adam, who's going to give us an update on the trends in programming and outreach, and then followed up by Joseph Keene, who's going to talk a little about what's on the books for the fall programming. David, if you could take it from here.
Great, thanks, Sean. I'm going to go ahead and direct you guys to page 10 in the agenda here. Page 10 is the Johnson County Library Total Revenue Report. As you can see, what we're looking at here this afternoon is the amount of revenue that we've received as of the end of July of 2020. So that's approximately 58% of the year. We've got a little over 36.1 million year-to-date received, which represents about 89%. That's down a little bit from where we would have been year-to-date last year. But again, part of that was expected as earlier in the year, we thought ad valorem delinquent revenues would be down, just kind of given what was going on. And the other thing is the interest rates are low, so we haven't, our investment income isn't generating what it was last year even. And then obviously having been closed for a few months, our copy printing, fines, fees, those sorts of things are all down, which would be expected. So really though, the revenue is pretty good year to date given those things. And then we more than make up for those small dips in revenue on the expense side. As you can see, year to date, at the end of July, we had spent approximately 18.6 million, which is around 46% of what we would anticipate being at this point in the year. And a good portion of that comes by way of salary and benefits savings. Obviously, our furloughing has contributed to that, as have some of the vacancies that we've been experiencing with staffing. And our contractual services are also down from where we would usually anticipate them to be at this point in time. I think a good portion of that's just not having and doing the in-person programming like we have. So again, these are things also when we were closed not doing. So if there's any questions, I'd be happy to take them. Otherwise, that's what I was planning on reporting for this month.
Hey, Dave, got a quick question.
Sure.
What are the investments we have? I assume it's pretty safe bonds or treasuries or something. And how much of the reserves do we have are we investing versus just keeping in cash?
So most of the reserves are invested in treasuries, and they're short term in nature. And to be honest with you, the interest rates on them are a fractional of percent. I mean, I think we're getting about maybe 0.5% right now, and the anticipation's probably even less than that next year, just given interest rates are almost, well, at 0%. And the good part is it's cheap to borrow money right now too, from an interest perspective. So, but yeah, that's really what the investment interests go into, essentially treasury bills. It's real safe investments. Nothing.
Have we considered it? I mean, does it make sense to reduce? I guess we probably can't reduce the debt just because the way the bonds are issued, but
So-
at least going forward, as we're considering borrowing, I know interest rates may not be ever this good again, although we've been saying that for a while. Or do we just say, look, we've got so many uncertainties with, I don't know, the bill as far as reducing property taxes eventually could come. Do we just feel like, look, let's just borrow what we need to borrow, and with the interest rates being low, let's just just kind of say, all right, interest rates are low, let's borrow what we need to borrow, just with some uncertainty going on? Or what are your thoughts on that? Or what have you been thinking about there?
Can I talk to this, Dave? Just so what we looked to do to when we really started this back in 15 was to maximize what we could do with a 0.75 mil. And the way that we can get more projects done is by cash funding different portions of it. So like with the Antioch, we are cash funding 2.5 million out of reserve. What this does is it allows us to debt the same amount, but if we cash fund, we're able to debt over a larger number of projects. And so in order to get Corinth, Blue Valley, Central, and Antioch, which is a bit of a stretch, and the Rural Renewal Initiative at Spring Hill and DeSoto, we needed to build up our reserves to defray or to maximize what we could debt, right? And so also that kind of going from the idea of the more we cash fund, the more you put down in a house, the less you have to pay back. And so we can only debt so much with a 0.75 mil. I think I think it's probably about 150 to 160 million. But if we're able to kind of offset that with our reserves, then it just is we're able to do a little bit more. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, that's fine. I know there's a give and take, and probably I'm glad you're going through that analysis more than just a 2-minute conversation here in this meeting. So.
Yeah, the analysis is quite deep, and in fact, it gets, as we're playing, we're also calculating as debt falls off as we do the capital plan, how we can actually put, with the debt falling off, will give us certain options going forward. And as we're doing that, we're looking at how close do we want to get budget on the balancing, and how much do we want to have a small cushion. And so when we're looking at that, where, when we get below $250,000 or that $200,000, that gets close, too close for us as far as balancing the budget goes. And so I think we have 1 year where we're close, and then we get through that kind of pinch point on this, and then we're able to go forward. But having the reserves always is a guarantee that we're able to meet our obligation or our debt liability. Does that make sense?
No, it makes complete sense. I mean, because you always want some reserves. I'm not saying we lost all that, but just want to, there's a balancing act between having so much reserves and taking on debt. So it's good to hear that you kind of trying to balance that out. So.
Yeah, we really built up the reserves in order to cash fund where we could, and when we get through this, and We couldn't have done the renewal initiative if we hadn't built up the reserves, or if and we're doing some cash funding on the CSSC, the Central Staff Space Consolidation. So over now to 2025, what you'll see is we'll actually expend that $11.2 million down. We'll still be within the reserve levels that the county requires for us to be, they want us to be in, but right at the moment, we're a little more than they would like, but we have the plan to expand it in the next probably 48 months.
Okay.
Dave, did I get that right?
You're correct, Sean. I mean, we're going to program in some uses of reserves to help finance some of those things, and the rural renewal initiative is obviously one of those. And then we may have some other remodeling projects that come along that we could also do with those funds. But they are good to put cash in on any of those debt projects. To me, it's about cash flow, and if you can keep your payments low. And I agree, it's still good to be locking in on these low interest rates. So, it's a combination of things.
How much do you think of a surplus we're going to end this year? Because I know, with the debt or at least with salaries, I mean, we're about $1.5 million, I think, under budget right now.
Yeah, so what you'll see next month is some of those are, some of those salary benefit savings will be actually an increase in our interfund transfer. So
Okay.
a little bit of a preview for what you'll see in August, because there was an agreement made towards the end of last year with facilities that has us moving 21 FTE into facilities for this year. So some of that money that's there isn't exactly savings for us. They are monies that need to be transferred to facilities. And the reason it wasn't fixed earlier is there's been a scramble on the budget side and facility side and COVID response, and we didn't get around to making those transfers until August. So there'll be some of those dollars will be moved to that interfund transfer line that's further down on expenses. And there will also be some contractual commodities coming out of there. So I can get you some estimates on where I think that will be if you're curious as kind of where I think we may end the year at.
No, I think that's good enough. It is. I mean, it sounds like we'll have some
There will be
surplus for the end of the year, but not as much as what we're on pace right now, just because of that. That's fine.
Yeah, I would agree. Correct.
And Dave, there's a few other things. One, just
Sure.
unexpected. One, we didn't have a digital platform, and On24 had to be purchased. And those Zoom and these other types of services are great. They're just not robust enough for us to be able to go and offer services to maybe 90 people or those types of things. The second unintended thing that we're having to do is temporary hire from a term and supply from the county, additional security. Though we're not seeing the number of incident reports go up, we are seeing the intensity of some of those incident reports. And they are generally involve compliance with wearing masks, but they also, the community is in a heightened state of agitation. And so the public's behavior, we've seen a shift, and it has become, with some individuals, much more adversarial. And in order to keep our staff and other patrons safe, we think at key locations we need to temporarily have security guards, and we will probably do that through until maybe the first 2 months of 2021. Just the threatening behavior that we're seeing is just it's concerning.
That's too bad. Quite embarrassing, actually. But I don't blame you for doing that.
Yeah, better safe than sorry on this one, I think.
Also, Bethany Griffith here. David, just so that you and everybody on the board is aware that a lot of this kind of deep penetration budget analysis stuff is actually what the officers cover in the budget meetings that we do kind of 3-4 times a year. And the officers do that so that the full board doesn't have to go as deep as we do. However, that doesn't mean that you can't see all of the information that we see. That if you want to go through it, if any board member wants to go through kind of all the spreadsheets that Dave does with all of the analysis, you just need to tag Amy or Sean or Michaela to get that information. That it's all a matter of public record, that there's nothing about it that's secret or hidden, that if you want to go through and do that analysis, or you have questions that you particularly want answers to, that the administration staff can get that to you at any time.
Thank you.
And I'd throw one other wrinkle in there too, from an expense standpoint. Some of these COVID expenses, we will be getting reimbursements from. There's some DMs that we're working on. So we will be reimbursed some of that, and we'll see. We just worked one up for the period from March to June, and we think we may have about $150,000 in eligible expenses from that period. So that's good news, and there will be 2 more periods of that here yet for this year. So.
Okay, if there are no more questions, invite Adam to come up, and then followed by Joseph. Over.
Excellent. Thank you, Sean. Hello, I'm Adam Wathen. I'm the Associate Director for System-Wide Services. And this month I'm joined by Joseph Keene. He's our Program and Events Coordinator. And I'll be giving the general statistics and reopening statistics and a report of some trends in programming. And then he's going to talk about programming and outreach for you. So as always, on the first page, you see that we include the core operational statistics of digital circulation, physical circulation, and visitation. And all 3 of those areas are pacing similarly to how they have been. It's this month, of course, the core operational statistics include the month of July. And we reopened our 3 drive-throughs in May. We opened our branches on June 15th, so that's half of a month in June. And you can see that reflected in our digital usage, where we got that bounce, and then it has maintained a significant increase over previous years. And then in the next graph, you see that physical circulation continued to gain in July to approximately 2/3 of the previous year's circulation. And in the final graph there, the visitation trend, while that's still trending upwards, it's not at the same pace of circulation. It's still less than half of previous years. And I'll dig in a little bit more into reopening statistics to talk more about those. And then if we can switch over to reopening statistics, Michaela, then I'll talk about those first before we talk about the programming trends. In our reopening statistics, thank you, Michaela, these charts I'm showing information comparing June 15th through August 31st of 2020 to the same period last year. And so on the first page, you see that checkouts and the number of individual patrons who are checking out are both down about the same amount from last year, around 30%. One of them is 29% and one of them is 31% there. And then on the next page, you'll see that the visitation has dropped by a little bit more than half, as it shows on the other screen. That's 54% in visitation. On the third page of this, you'll see that the number of holds placed tells a little bit of a different story. We're on pace from the amount of materials we received. I'm sorry. We have a similar number of holds as last year with only a 3% drop. And this means that a larger percent of patrons are getting their material through holds instead of browsing our collections. And the chart on the right shows that the amount of materials we are actually moving through our system, the number of items that we receive, so that's returns or things that we're moving from branch to branch for holds, has actually increased from last year by 9%. This means that our materials handling staff are doing more work than last year, moving materials to meet people's holds, even though we have a lower checkout rate. And finally, on the last page, last month I was asked to give an update on computer use, and I'm showing on these charts a similar curve on each chart. The left-hand chart shows the hours of computer use in 2020. You can see that we haven't reclaimed the hours, and we're only seeing about 25% of the hours on our computers that we saw in January. And on the chart on the right, you'll see the number of computer sessions, which is only about a third of the computer sessions that we had in January. And this does pattern with our visitation count. And it also makes sense due to our current restriction of 1 session per user per day and our limitation of those sessions to 70 minutes. And we're doing that in alignment with COVID restrictions. So do you have any questions for me about those reopening statistics before I step forward into programming? Okay, Michaela, can we go back over to programming? Thank you. The trends in programming and outreach. Programming includes all of those programming and events that we provide in the library for patrons, and these are 2019 reports. Outreach includes those times that we take those services out into the community, like when we provide a story time at a daycare or a school. Like I said, these reports run through the end of 2019, and they don't include our recent transition to online programming. The first report is pretty straightforward. It shows the total attendance of our programs and outreach since 2014 or 2013. You can see a dip in 2015 when we made a strategic shift to reduce the number of programs to focus on quality. And it's also a transition from a branch-based programming model to a more strategic system-wide effort to offer programs across the county. You see the same dip in 2015 when we look at other trend lines too. You also see a dip in 2018. We shifted our focus in 2018 to opening Monticello and getting ready to move Lackman operations to the Lenexa City Center site. We reduced our capacity to program with staff moving into new roles because of Monticello hiring, and by intentionally not programming at Monticello until 2019 so that that staff could provide direct service instead of programming to the citizens of Monticello while they got their feet on the ground. So you can see that our program attendance returned to 2017 levels again in 2019 after that 2018 dip. On the next trend, it shows the average attendees per program for the same time period. And you can see that it's been pretty consistent over time. Yep, and it's been pretty consistent over time, although it does increase through the years. Even though the number of programs was significantly reduced in 2015, we increased our average attendance per program, and it's one indicator that we continue to increase our return on investment by holding fewer programs while increasing our connection with patrons. And the next set of trends breaks our programming and outreach categories by age. In 2017, to align with state level data gathering, we began to count our school age youth programming separately from our birth to 6 programming. And so you see that split with the dotted lines there where the blue line doesn't dive to the other blue line. It actually splits into the yellow and the blue line. At the beginning of 2020, we hired a new elementary age coordinator. So future years should see some changes in that youth programming line because we're going to be focusing on that very specifically. The next trend shows the number of programs broken out by age. And you can see that our adult programming has reduced in number and our teen programming has remained fairly flat. Over the last few years, the number of total programs we provide has remained fairly stable though. And in the final graph, the reduction in number of programs since 2014 overall has not impacted our attendance. and that we are seeing an increase in the average number of attendees in every category except for teens, which you see dips a little bit. And it's dropped down to 2015 levels in both the number of programs and the average attendance. But overall, this shows a real strategic use of resources to provide programming and outreach that uses fewer staff resources for greater impact. Do you have any question? Go ahead.
Yeah, I would just add something, because I think with many of our board members being newer, when I say newer, maybe since 2015. So a number of years ago, maybe in 2014, I think, Joan Fry Williams, who was a futurist, came and talked to the library about this initiative of commoditizing our programming, and really challenged us. And so pre 2014, what we were doing was developing programs at each of our branch locations, and the staff there were doing it, and they were running those programs. It's a very decentralized way to do it, but one of the challenges that we said is, how do you do more with less? And Joe came and talked to us about commoditizing the programming, which means that you would have a group of people, and that could be from a number of our locations, come together and create a program. But then that program would go and be done at a number of those branch locations. And so branches would get out of the business of making their own programming. We would bring a level of consistency, but we would also really strategically create programs that people wanted. And Joseph, Angel, and Kinsley have been part of that initiative. But it really, as we're building these buildings, we forget to maybe share some of the structural ways that our organization is structured and how we do business. And so rather than having 14 locations create programming, that programming is done much more in collaboration centrally, and then dispersed throughout our 14 library systems. And that's a tremendous amount of work. Some people have to stop doing what they're doing and hand over those responsibilities, but also trust that the programming that they're going to get for their location is going to be meaningful for the staff. What we see, as I think from that 2014 date, is that Joan's advice and the direction is proving providing dividends, because we are continuing to see increase, which I think is a real value add in our program. People want to come to library programs because they're interesting and they're meaningful to them. So I thought I'd just add that perspective, and also thanks, Adam.
Yeah, absolutely. Any other questions?
Yeah, I just wanted to thank Adam for attending a Rotary Zoom meeting. He gave a really informative presentation and did the library very proud. There were a lot of good questions at the end, and they even asked him if he would like to become a member of Gardner Rotary. So thank you, Adam.
Thank you for the invitation. It was really enjoyable. I appreciate it. Thank you, Donna. Any other questions? Okay. Joseph?
Perfect.
Okay.
Yes, you're on, Joseph. And
oh, I'm up. Okay.
Yes.
First of all, thank you. Thank you for inviting me to talk about programming initiative here at the library. As Adam said, I'm Joseph Keene. I'm the event and programs coordinator for the library system. I want to walk you through a little exercise before we get started. I want you to think back to this time last year. What were you doing? At the library, we had just wrapped up our summer reading program, and we're in the beginning days of our fall programming series. Last year, we offered over 2,700 programs and events to our patrons, all in person. It was not a part of our practice for programming to do this virtually. Today looks very different. In places of meeting rooms to offer programs, we have Zoom. In place of storytime rooms, we have living rooms. Since April, we have held over 200 programs online and have reached over 10,000 attendees for virtual experiences ranging from large-scale author panel discussions to intimate writing workshops. This fall, we will feature program services of story times, book discussions for adults and youth, career and finance programs, makerspace, and teen programs as well. We have identified the topic areas of elections and race and the events Women and Money Day and Writers Conference as priorities to program. Our fall season began this week with daily virtual story times and book parties twice a week, both featured on Facebook Live. Building on the success of our youth book groups this summer, we have 4 youth and debuting 4 adult offerings of book discussions, all available on Zoom this fall. All participants will receive a discussion schedule and physical copies of each featured text to be read. Makerspace favorites such as Intro to Sewing and Makerspace for Beginners are back up and running. We are reimagining our large events like the annual Writers Conference and Women and Money Day to be offered in this virtual new space. Women and Money Day is being rebranded so that it's geared to both women and men and will be held on October 3rd. For the Writers Conference, you will be able to look forward to the publication of Volume 3 and the conference in November. Both these events will be accessible via On24, a digital experience platform that is best described as a virtual building, complete with engagement tools for attendees and presenters to interact. The first library program to use On24 will be the debate watch party scheduled for Tuesday, September 29th. Library Let's Loose is scheduled for this weekend, so the foundation will be using that platform technically first. As our programs continue to be developed for online engagement, our planning and ideation process has shifted as well. Through virtual input sessions, online committee meetings, and electronic surveys, we are being more inclusive with staff in developing programs for our patrons. In this inclusive, collaborative process, we are moving forward with a focus on the election and race. Some engagements already planned include debate watch parties and a local history lecture series that will kick off in October with a lecture entitled "The Past is Prolonged, the Kansas City Monarchs in Your Hometown." This is just a sampling of the programming to be offered this fall. Program details are subject to change and additional programs will be added throughout the fall. So please check the library's website for the most current information. Again, thank you for your time, and I will do my best to answer any questions you might have.
Okay, if there are no questions for Joseph, the next I would like to invite Scott Syme to come up and talk to us about the central staff space consolidation, and also then to talk, share with us the timeline and where we're at on these projects. Thanks, Scott. Scott, are you with us? You appear to be muted, Scott.
We'll give Scott a minute while
Let
he's rebooting.
So I'll just start and then Scott can join us as we go along. Technology is always going to be a challenge for us. So let's take a look at the central building upgrade part 2. Next slide, please. So today I'm going to talk to you about the design updates, some of the next steps, and looking at the timeline. So the design continues, and we've had some really great meetings since we talked last, so lots going on, and we'll give you a planning update also. So if we take a look at here, if we can go, remember where we started off in 2019 with the programming, and then we looked at the options, 3 options to the board, and the option picked was number 3. And then we took it to the BOCC. We did that all through 19. Then we've issued an RFP, and we're in the design process. Titan is the company that's going to be doing this work. And that's where we're at the moment. We're in the 3rd quarter. The next piece is for the bidding, and then we enter into construction beginning in 2021, which will be on us before we know it. And then again, the end of 2021, we'll be moving back into the central library. Next slide, please.
That's the final slide for the
great.
CSS.
Awesome. Do we have a slide for the all the projects?
We do, and I think Scott may be back.
Okay. Scott's like a boomerang. If you throw him, he'll eventually come back to you. Well, I'm not going to hold my breath for Scott. Let's move. Do we have the slide and we can showing all the projects lined up?
Yes, sorry. I will have it up in just a moment, hopefully here.
Not a problem. As Michaela's doing that, I'm going to talk a little about the projects as they're going forward. I think one of the things that you'll see is that we're going to be doing the study for the Rural Renewal Initiative is coming up fairly quickly. The updates from last month is I reached out to West Jordan, the city manager from Prairie Village, just asking where they were as far as the project or collaborative project together at Harmon Park. And what Wes shared with me is the city, like everyone, is still working to get through COVID and is really focused on that as a city. And so they're in a holding pattern. We just shared with them that, as soon as the city was wanting to re-engage that the library was here, we were still expressed that we're interested in this partnership and we're wanting to work with them, but the timing, of course, has to be right for the city to do that. So let's take a look at the timeline and see if Scott, I see it muted. Do you want to have a go at this and step people through it?
I'll give it a shot. Can you guys hear me now?
Crystal
Hooray!
clear, Scott. Whoopee.
I apologize, guys. That is totally embarrassing.
It's not. It's like teamwork makes the dream work, Scott.
There you go. Okay, so thank you, Sean, for talking about the CSSC. And what you guys are looking at now is the overall capital improvement timeline, anticipated timeline. So you'll see that we are all on, or we're at the red line or red arrow currently. We're working through design for the central project, and then yet this year we anticipate starting the Rural Renewal Initiative study. And then other than that, I mean, there haven't been any changes to this since you guys saw it last month. Any questions on this timeline or on the CBU Part 2 Central Project?
Scott, Bethany Griffith here. Can you give the board members a rough overview of what we're going to cover in the RRI, since that came out of budget? Not everybody may know what we're actually looking to answer, what kind of questions we're going to be asking, and kind of maybe the goal of the project.
Sure. I'll go ahead and start, and then Sean, if I leave anything out, please feel free to jump in. So the RRI study looks at Spring Hill and DeSoto specifically. Those two weren't in the first 5 priorities of the Comprehensive Library Master Plan initially. So what this looks at is what can we do, and how, and public input would be a part of this too. What can we do to improve the buildings we have currently? And that could be more technology, that could be meeting room space, that could be different levels of access. And of course, we'd want to hear from the patrons out in those parts of town. Those would look at our existing buildings. Bethany, does that?
Are we just looking at buildings, or, because when you mentioned access, I'm not sure everybody on the board knows what you mean by that, because we don't mean literally the physical access, how you walk into the building. We mean how the building is used by patrons in the community.
Yep. Can I talk to this one?
Please.
So this really came out of the work I did with Wayne when we were looking at the possibility of relocating the Spring Hill Library into a partnership with the school. And one of the pieces that he kind of shared was the access. And so when I'm talking about access, I'm talking about it in two ways. Access into the physical building to use all the resources there and access to the collection, and then broadening the access to Wi-Fi. And so there are kind of two things that we want to kind of talk to the community about and get a deeper understanding, both at Spring Hill and in DeSoto, which is what are the resources that your community needs, and how can we expand the hours without actually going and expanding staffing costs. It's the most expensive thing to us. And that's why we initially did the Holds Lobby at Lenexa, knowing that we would very much want to be able to create an experience where people could maybe scan their library card and get access to the building. And it doesn't have to be a librarian there. And you could pick up an item, a book on the shelf and do self-check. Or if you're want to reserve a room for a meeting that you have before your day starts, an early morning meeting, could you use our meeting rooms? And what we're finding with the Lenexa project is that people really like this feature. It also, just as a community resource, it allows us to have much longer operating hours and not have staff there. Are there security issues? Yes, there are. But we think with cameras and the dot access that you have to kind of get your library card converted so it have that access, that we know who's going to be in the building. Do we feel concerned about, will people steal the computers? And I think that's where we're beginning to go. Maybe at this point we do the ability to, with laptop dispensing machines, which we're doing in Monticello. So all the things that we've been doing at Monticello and the Lenexa City Center are kind of lessons that we want to apply on these rural communities. Preliminary when talking with the communities, it's meeting rooms. It's the number one thing that they need, and then extended access. And so because they're smaller locations and they're smaller communities, they're not going to maybe run into some of the issues that we might happen at some of our larger locations. We're going to have to work with, I think, law enforcement and other types of entities to extend this. But part of the thing is to make these buildings more visible from the outside. So that means adding more glazing or windows, lighting, all of those types of features in that. But again, how do we maximize this asset for the community? And then do we have a really deep understanding of what the community really, really needs? And I think that's where the study's going out, and we're going to be looking at with community stakeholders. We'll probably be talking to Wayne again. We'll be talking to different groups, whether it be church groups or Rotaries or Kiwanis or Lions or any other group that operates that might be able to utilize this space. Over.
Sean, Fabian Shepherd, thank you very much for that. And Bethany, a great question. I had a question about Spring Hill and lack of morning access to the library. I didn't realize it. No mornings can you go in that library except on Saturday, just 2 hours in the morning. So this helps me give that person some more information about what's on the horizon for them.
Yeah, there was a lot of nervousness when we first looked at it, but we've incrementally been able to test that out. And so we think that the laptop lending is a good model, and we're seeing people not struggle with that. And then we're seeing that the holds lobby at Lenexa is working, and we're not seeing any of the things that we thought we would. People aren't stealing books. They're coming in to that lobby whenever they want in the morning before open or after we're closed and checking out the book and moving on. And I think that just is, it falls right in the realm of one of our huge strategic initiatives, which is convenience. The library has to be open when it's convenient to you, not when it's convenient to us. And we're just striving to try and figure out how do we do that that keeps everyone safe, keeps the assets safe, but also provides the access without putting the overhead of staff cost in. Over.
Sean, it's Fabian again. I really love the partnership that we're exploring with the school district there in Spring Hill. That's a great thing. I'd love to see trend. Is there consideration of doing that also in DeSoto and Edgerton?
Not so much with DeSoto or Edgerton. The problem, the big challenge we had with Spring Hill was that the population base has much easier access to the location that we're at today, and that the school being slightly much closer to the subdivisions than we were. We did a study of just access to that school campus, and it's difficult. If you're 12 years old, it would be difficult to get to. You would have to have your parent. So driving to the school is great. We looked at other national models, and there's just a couple where a public library has worked with the school system. Just the problem, the biggest problem we run into is that when we do a public library, we open it to the general public, and it comes with a whole set of complications or behaviors that you may or may not want in a school system from the general public. And that's not true for 99.9% of the general public. They're just wonderful, but we do get a small fraction of the public which come into our facilities and either having some kind of life issue or struggling with some mental health issue, and that's always just a concern because for children's safety, particularly when the library is connected to a school system. It just presents more challenges. It's not impossible, it just presents more challenges. And if you're interested, if any board members are interested in the study we did on Spring Hill, I'm going to be happy to share that with you. That was done a number of years ago. Over. Does anyone have any follow-up questions for Scott? If not, I would like to invite Jan and Nancy to talk, give an update on the reopening team.
Good afternoon, everybody. Jennifer Munkin, Associate Director for Branch Services. I apologize, this presentation wasn't in your packet ahead of time as I missed my deadline to get it into the packet. So I really apologize for that. Michaela, you can go to the next slide. We're going to be talking today just about staffing and where we are with that, and then the quarantining and the realm study. Michaela can go ahead. So for staffing, we do finally have positions posted and are beginning to start interviewing for those positions. We currently have 15 clerk positions posted. I believe 10 of those are full-time and 5 of those are part-time to be placed throughout the system. We have 4 information services and YS positions open. 1 of those is information services and 3 of those are youth services. And so we're in the hiring process. We hope to have those people hired by October and begin to onboard them in October. And then at that point, we will begin to look at our workflow and continue to evaluate whether or not we can look to recommend adding hours back in to our services. The other thing I just wanted to update you on is the Realm project, which is a study that's being conducted by Columbus Public Library and several other supporting agencies, including IMLS. They continue to do research on the effects of the virus on library materials. Unfortunately, there was a bit of a setback with the results that came out recently, and they determined that the virus does live on library materials that are stacked up. If materials are separated and not touching each other, the virus goes away very quickly. If it's stacked up, the virus tends to last a little bit longer. We have not made any changes to our quarantining at this time. We have a minimum of 72-hour quarantining at this time, and that seems to be working. We've had no issues with staff getting the virus in that way. So we're continuing to follow that model. We are continuing also to talk to our fellow libraries around the metro area, comparing notes and just asking each other how we're progressing with this. And everybody's pretty much keeping the same pace as they were. They're maintaining their course as it is currently. So we're not making any recommendations to change our quarantining at this time. That's all I have for our update today. Is there any questions you all have for me?
Jen, this is Amy.
Hi, Amy.
Do you still keep them like all spread out on the floor in like a room like I've seen pictures?
Yes, we have piles. So while they're still stacked a little bit, they are spread within little contained areas.
Are they at each branch like that, or do you go to a central location? Or
yes, they are like that at every location. Every location has a spot for their quarantining of materials.
All right, thanks.
Uh-huh. Are there other questions you all have?
So I'm just going to add a little bit. So IMLS, OCLC, Bartell, and the Columbus Metro are the kind of four big entities. The issue was that on DVD cases and CD cases, they could see the virus living up to 5 days. And the reason we're not advising to do that is because working with the CDC's data, that it's very difficult to catch the virus off a surface. We're learning about COVID, it is primarily airborne. So we felt that the 3 days plus the period of time that it would go on the shelf and a person is alerted would get us there, and that the risk to the public is it's not zero, but it's very, very low. And so we've done tens of thousands of books, and we have no cases. And thank you, Tricia's talking about that. IMLS is the Institute of Museums and Library Sciences, and the OCLC is the not-for-profit that handles all the recording of library materials as far as a database that we use when we acquire. It's been with us for a long time. So is there any questions or concerns on us not changing that recommendation for longer?
Staff still doesn't seem to be overly worked by changing this process. You're still good with that?
Yeah, I'm still comfortable with it. We looked at it really hard, but then kind of compared to the actual, sort of someone sneezing on a table and you wiping, your hand and then touching your face. I mean, you would have to be quite intentional about catching it off a surface. It just does not, just because the virus is living on the surface doesn't mean that it's readily that it's a mechanism where it's transferred. And the science that we're seeing is bearing that out.
And staff are still using gloves when they're handling the material the first time after coming out of quarantine. So that also reduces the risk.
Okay, if there are no more questions on that, I'm going to move on and introduce the Lackman study. So Christopher Leach and Scott, Auditory Scott, is going to be talking about this, but primarily this is a return to present kind of an overview of where we're at with the study. The study is at this point complete. Some key features about this is we really heard what you said about looking at, we've gone ahead and done a price match, or what they call comps, for how much this property is worth, working with an outside company to do that. We also did a look at rental properties or and the cost per square foot. We also looked at purchasing another property. Those the three areas the board has looked at us to do. We also really heard what you said last time, which was that the initial cost was expense was maybe too much. And so the question kind of came back as which is, what is the minimal amount we could set this building up for the Friends to operate a bookstore out of it? What is the lowest dollar? And really, how can we reduce financial risk to the smallest amount while we do kind of a proof of concept? So rather than diving into the pool, we really came to the approach of like, let's be very conservative and just dip our toe into the pool or our foot and see if our assumptions are actually proved to be true. And so Scott and Christopher, I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you, Sean. We're going to be sharing presentation duties. I'll be walking you through the first few slides, and then Scott will take over. I apologize, our slide deck was late getting to you as well. Scott and I were playing editing ping pong, and I dropped that little ball. So my apologies to you all. We can go to page 1, please. Thank you. This kind of proposal really results from our robust partnership with the library and the Friends. We're really strongly aligned in all ways, and we work assiduously in each other's best interests. The Friends are really grateful for the enthusiasm and encouragement that they have received during this process, and it makes us even more eager to work hand in hand with the library and support you in any way we can. It isn't surprising because the Friends did found the library. Next page, please. Understanding the history of the Friends is a study in the community, or the market, if you prefer, in action. Our residents almost 70 years ago said, we want this service and we're willing to pay for it. This was reaffirmed in our 2015 ROI study with KU. People believe in libraries and they want to support them. That's especially true of the Friends organization. We are major donors to Johnson County Library. Our cash passed to the library has exceeded $2.4 million over the past 20 years. Each year, we commit $450,000 value of volunteer hours to supporting the library in a variety of ways. We reaffirmed this support in our 2019 strategic plan. We know our support is steady and we want it to grow. That plan called for us to be more efficient and thus more profitable in order to benefit the library in more ways. Next page, please. This slide deck presents an evolution of the plan that Sean has previously updated you about, and he briefed you on that, how to effectively use the Lackman space to support Friends' support of the library. We've looked at 2 scenarios: maintaining ownership of the building with the Friends consolidating retail operations to that address, and selling the building, and we'll talk about those details with you today. The benefits offered by maintaining ownership, locating the Friends store there, allow the Friends to operate at a library property, and there's great mission resonance and reinforcement for both organizations there. The growth opportunities for an already successful Friends operation are enhanced by, instead of operating 3 separate retail operations, a number of seasonal sales at different locations, and a summer sale, and then online sales, co-locating all of those retail operations makes it much more customer friendly and thus more successful for the library. It allows the Friends to earn more money to direct to JCL, and that's our goal. Next page, please. The unique opportunity presented right now to field test this proposal is presented by the CBU2 project. The library will find it necessary to operate a satellite location for some staff to be relocated for the comprehensive work to continue at the central location. The Friends are asking your permission for our field test while the building is in this service for JCL staff. Scenario 1, which would locate the Friends stores from the 3 branches where they currently exist to this address, would occupy the space for the duration of the time that the staff is there and a little bit beyond to demonstrate the strength of this concept of reaffirming the retail presence of the Friends alongside their already robust and successful online sales. Next page. The implementation cost you can see here is about 13% of the proposal outlined earlier this year. That's responsive to the concerns that were expressed to us by our elected officials and our appointed officials. The benefits, again, are the opportunity to test an already strong market concept. The Friends have been testing this concept for 30 years in the community, and we see strong response. There's customer demand for used books, and we are one of the only retail outlets meeting that need in Johnson County, and we want to make ourselves bigger and stronger in order to benefit the library. Increases our contributions to the library. That mission resonance I talked about can't be overestimated because in a community where people agree to pay for a library service, even if they don't use it themselves personally, we find that they're as eager to buy used books and support their Friends with their memberships in order to keep the library strong and robust and a dynamic contributor to our community. It's also worth noting that the building is owned currently free and clear by the library, and the library has long provided the resource of real estate to the Friends in order to help them succeed. We like to think of it as an extended thank you to the Friends for helping provide the original real estate where the libraries first opened in 1956. Scott Syme is going to talk to you now about some of the details of scenario 1, starting with the next slide.
Thanks, Christopher. Before I start, can everybody hear me okay? Okay, just making sure. Okay, so what you're looking at on this slide is that phased scenario that Sean and Christopher both mentioned. We're currently in phase 0. And before we would move the Friends in, if this is ultimately approved by the library board, we would need to do some move-in improvements over there, and that's really what that phase 1 cost is. To say out loud, that phase 1 cost represents the minimum investment we'd make to get the Friends into the building, and it also assumes that the equipment targeted for replacement later needs minimal intervention through phase 1. Phase 1 would be consolidating the bookstores over at Lackman. As Christopher mentioned, we would run that for about 18 months. At that point, the decision would come back to the library board. Is this successful? Do we want to continue to invest in the Lackman building? And then if that is affirmative, we would move on to phase 2, which would run about 3 years. And that would continue the Friends consolidation at Lackman, moving the sorting and the online sales components over to the Lackman building. You'll see an estimated cost there too. At that point, the library board, this would come again before the library board to determine, is this still a successful endeavor? And if so, we would move into phase 3, and you'd see that sort of final phase 3 cost there. The costs presented for phases 2 and 3 represent a realistic look at with the knowledge we have today and are not overly optimistic or pessimistic. Okay, next slide, please. So what this slide shows is a 10-year financial projection that the Friends put together. The top half of that is along the top row, you'll see those phases. And then you'll see the Friends actual revenues and expenses over on the far left column, and then sort of how those costs and expenses change over that 10-year period. This is a conservative look. Okay, next slide, please. So what we're showing on this slide is a forecast for phase one, or scenario one. Apologies. This is a moderate forecast to say currently if the Friends continues their current operations, they would net right around $500,000 over a 10-year period. So we see that if the Friends were to move into the Lackman building, their revenues would increase over that same 10-year period by just right around $1 million, which is great. Just to talk a little bit about the optimistic forecast, as revenue opportunities demonstrate success, we feel like those revenues presented on the previous slide may grow even faster than they're presented. One of the things that is on the bottom of this slide is potential library functions that could also occur over the Lackman building, as the Friends would continue to be there. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, what this slide shows is the total anticipated expense for the Friends moving into Lackman. You'll see at the very top, that first dollar amount is 1.3 million. That is our updated appraisal valuation for the Lackman building. So we had done a previous appraisal in November of 2017, and this one is an updated version. You'll see that the cost there, or the appraisal valuation, dropped about $200,000. After that, you'll see those phase 1, 2, and 3 cost components get duplicated from the page before. A subtotal and then the total estimated expense. So this is a time for me to say that Lackman is an opportunity for increased Friends success. In addition to the dollar amount growing, the value, the revenue that the Friends would bring in, we feel like this is a pipeline also for more robust volunteer engagement. And I think, as Christopher mentioned earlier, that annual valuation in dollars right now is $450,000 a year. On the second half of this slide, what you're seeing is a project return. So this looks at, the scenario 1 box here looks at if we were to, this looks at the Friends revenue over 10 years. That's that previous table with the revenue projections. Scenario 2 looks at what we would get in return if we were to sell the building and invest that money in our investments. And Dave talked a little bit about that concept earlier on. So what you'll see is that the Friends contributions beat that, at least the first two of those, sort of the low and high prediction for those costs, or for those revenues. Okay, next slide, please. So that was all scenario 1. That looks at moving the Friends into the Lackman building. What I'll talk a little bit about next is scenario 2, which contemplates selling the building and relocating the Friends to another property. So I've got a 2A and a 2B here. So 2A is what you're looking at currently, and this is what we found as far as buying another building for the Friends. So we looked at availability, we looked at cost, we looked at space available, and then there are a few other factors. So the availability for buying a building right now in Johnson County is low. There are few buildings available. The cost for the prices that we found were between 1.7 and $2 million. The space, the amount of space in the buildings that we were able to find is between $10,000 and $40,000. 10 and 40,000 square feet. My apologies. And the Lackman building is right around 17, I think 17,500 square feet total. A couple of other factors to mention here. Any building that we would buy would likely need both interior and exterior improvements, including maintenance over time, just like any of our buildings. And the specifics would need to be looked at individually for each space. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, this is scenario 2B, and this one looks at leasing a space. So similar factors here that we are presenting tonight. We looked at availability. There are a variety of spaces available for lease in Johnson County. We also looked at cost, and the annual cost for the buildings that we looked at ranged from between $100,000 and $350,000 a year. The space that we looked at was between 10 and 25,000 square feet, and the type of space was anything from warehouse to retail. We also looked at lease duration, or what we found with lease duration, I should say, is that the minimum expected lease duration is 3 years. So just to say out loud that 3 years, that's 3 years, and the cost above is annually, so that's 1 year. A few other factors here. Any tenant improvement costs we would need to look at individually based on the space. Most spaces do have some amount of tenant improvement cost that the owner provides. And then each space would need a different level of tenant improvement. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so what you're looking at here is the anticipated timeline if the library board were to approve this concept, this scenario 1. So we are at the red arrow there currently. We're presenting this information to you tonight just as information. We're anticipating it to be back on the library board's agenda in October. We are also anticipating to have a study session with the Board of County Commissioners so that we can share this information with them. And then after that, that assumes approval. We would be looking at a period of redesign, a period of design, zoning, bidding, contract, and construction and move in to get the building ready for the Friends to move in. And then phase 1, we would anticipate would begin next summer. To say out loud also, this is just for the Friends bookstore component. The Friends sorting center, which is the other half of the bookstore, would continue to be open throughout this period and through the phase 1 period. Okay, next slide. Okay, this is the point where I'll pass it back over to Christopher to close, and then we are happy to hear your questions. Christopher?
It's no secret that the Friends are really passionate supporters of the library. We're really excited about this proposal because we think it gives us the opportunity to do more for the library than even we have imagined over the past 68 years of committed support. We recirculate at least 250,000 books into Johnson County and the region, and all of our board members and all of our Friends members are really excited about keeping books in the hands of Johnson Countyans. We know that a community that reads is academically successful. We know that readers are attractive to employers, and they're imaginative and curious, and they're successful and happy in their lives. We don't just sell books. We know that we help improve lives in ways large and small, and we are eager to lock arms even more strongly with the library as we grow and succeed. We do supply books and we support the library. The most important thing that we help do is sustain our community, and we want to continue to do that with you. Thank you for listening to us today.
Do you have any questions for Scott or Christopher, or comments that we hopefully delivered on the information that you'd kind of requested in this report? And if we've missed anything, please let us know, and we can get that additional information.
Bethany Griffith here. First of all, Christopher, thank you for the rah-rah speech. I'm really glad to hear it out there because I think it's really important for everybody to know, especially up through the county commissioners, because they have had questions about our thinking through this process, what we want to do with the building. And I think it's really important to have a clear and concise narrative about what the Friends mean to our organization, that we have a partnership with the foundation to kind of collectively do the mission of the library, and that we're interrelated, that we have a mandate from the county and we use tax money to operate for the Johnson County Library, and that gets us the cake. But the Friends and the foundation get us the frosting and the sprinkles and all of the awesome stuff that makes our library system extraordinary. And so I want to really thank you for, going the extra mile to make sure that we can see the literal economic impact that the Friends have on our organization in terms of volunteer time, but also that they're at a crossroads in terms of how we move forward as our buildings change and they start to lose space, and that it's important that we as a board look to the future long term for how to continue that partnership, the partnership that literally founded this library system. And so thank you for doing that, for all of your in-depth work, for all of the financial analysis, and really just to the whole admin team for really putting this together well, to answering our questions. And so I'm really excited to start seeing the fruit of this labor so that we can kind of pivot together for the next 70 years of a Friends Foundation and library partnership. So rock on, you guys are awesome. Thank you.
Does anyone else have any questions that are similar to Bethany's?
I've got a few questions. I don't know.
Okay. No, go on. Hit us with the hard stuff, Dave.
Well, I agree. I think that, this is kind of a tough, a lot of things going on, certainly no questioning their support and their commitment and everything else over the years. But I still think it has to make sense financially. So as far as the cost of upgrades, the 500,000, the 2.5 and the 2 million, is that coming from the library or is that coming from the Friends? Where's that money coming from for those upgrades? That's the first question.
That's a good question. So it would be coming from the library. The library would be backing this. That's why we thought it was good to have these at each of the phases, to have a kind of a go, no go. So the library, just to say it out loud, it's $557,000, I think $500, that the library's obligation after the foundation's gift would be $457,500.
And that would be cash reserve.
That would come out of cash reserve, and we would have to get the BOCC's approval to go ahead and do that. It would be pretty tough to take that out of operating. I'm not saying it's impossible. We would have to stop. We would have to stop things. And really, in my mind, it's really, we want all the key stakeholders, the Board of County Commissioners, the Library Board, the Friends, the Foundation, all to be in agreement that this is a good idea. And I wouldn't advise if the Board of County Commissioners was adamant about us not going forward, I would want to come back and really talk that through and really share the concerns with the board about that. But the other costs, yes, it's our belief, looking at internet sales and being able to put the entire Friends inventory in a retail space, that our estimations will be our revenue will exceed what we're projecting. And so Vicki Dent was a comptroller for a city. And so she did all the financials on the Friends side. We did the most conservative, the absolute most conservative that we wanted to underpromise and overdeliver. So it's my personal feeling that that the Friends revenue will hopefully be able to defray some of these costs that we're going to experience in the future, because their revenue is going to be, they're going to net more. But we'll know that, you know, you never know it in a business if this is going to be true, but 18 months of bookstore operations for a liability cost of 457 is probably going to give us a pretty good idea of what future sales will be, and we will have a lot more information. We'll also have 18 months of using the scanner at the sorting center at Pine Ridge. And so what you may not know and wasn't shared, that the Friends have gone ahead with the hand scanner and the technology to scan the item and have that item priced, and the algorithm to tell us, yep, that book's going to sell within the first 30 days if you put it online or not. And so those numbers, if you remember back in the business plan, it was called Value IT or Value It. They were projecting sales. What we're seeing is that those projections are proving out to be true, that the algorithm does actually tell you, don't put this online because it won't sell. Put these items online at this price point and they'll sell within 30 days. 90% of your inventory that you put online will sell within 30 days. That's proving to be true. And we've done 2 months of that, but having another 18 to 20 months of that scanning will give us a lot of data on like how are our online sales going, and do we want to take that next step, which is to automate that process so we can take our entire book inventory, the Friends inventory, and scan it all through. And the reason we can't do that today is we just don't have the people power. We just don't have the number of people that can handle that material, scan it at the sorting center. We just don't have that capacity. The only way we're going to get that capacity is by automating it, putting it on a conveyor, having 26 cameras take a photograph of it, and then sorting it into different piles that aren't going to sell online and piles that are. Does that help?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Yep.
This is Amy. I appreciate the field study. I think that's a good idea to do the 18 months. Also, the Pine Ridge Sorting Center, how long is that going to remain open after they move in?
So that's going to remain open for that 18-month period. We're not going to join them until move that sorting center into Lackman until we went into out of phase 1 and into phase 2. And there's a milestone that the library board looks at and they will be reporting back on those statistics to you. Hopefully, you know, if you approve this next month and we're able to move, then as part of their monthly report to the board, they will be sharing sales, and we will be able to do like we do with library statistics comparison, like this is what the 3 bookstores were selling. Now they're not selling anything. Everything's being sold at this one location. Are we seeing an increase in book sales? And that should be pretty easy for us to track month in and month out over that 18-month period.
Is it eventually they'll have all their sorting at Lackman if it goes forward?
Yeah, if everything works out, our staff will vacate Lackman after about a year or roughly about that time. And then the back side of the building will become available. We'll have done the bookstore for 18 months and they would have the ability to move in and put the sorting equipment in there. Some other things which we didn't get into, which is everything that they're paying to rent the Pine Ridge space at that point would come back to us as income. Also, their courier service, which they talked a little about today, which I think runs between $15,000 and $17,000 a year, that would go. The need for that would go away because we would just have one destination. One of the things that's kind of new that the Friends have also done for the first time is used our Influence, which is our communication platform, particularly as people are home with COVID and have done some testing with asking people for donations, and they were just overwhelmed with donations. So that was another piece that we thought we could capitalize on, that we're a rich community that reads, and we thought that there is a lot of inventory out there that people just want to give away to the friends. What are we going to do with all these books? We've read them. And the Friends provides a great opportunity for that. On the library side, when we had the community come and talk to the library about Lackman moving to Lenexa and some of the dissatisfaction with that, we thought having a checkout and the ability to pick up a hold or drop off your material or a meeting room may also be a good utilization of that building, and also kind of increase foot traffic.
Okay, thanks.
Got a couple more, and feel free other board members to jump in if you know, so I'm not just doing all the talking here, but so I'm just trying to get a hold of all the costs and such. So the 557, how much, I think you said you'll be buying a machine. Maybe that's not now, that we would eventually could use. So I want to make sure that the 557 is true cost, because if some of these improvements would actually increase the value of the building, then it's maybe not a true $557,000. Would any of these improvements help the resale of the building? I guess first off, that's kind of that would help your case.
Yeah, I think the big one, and maybe the biggest cost, is the sprinkler system. So the building's going to be rezoned, and we have to put a fire suppression system in. And I think that's going to increase the cost, the value for that building, because anyone that moved in and was trying to use this in a new way, I don't think you can use it residential, would be required to foot that expense. I think anyone else that moved into this location would be looking at some of the ADA issues that we're addressing, and so again, that's a value add. But we can look into that and get back with you next month with the actual specifics. But off the top of my head, those are the big things.
Right. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, I'm just trying to get a true cost, because if some of it just, you know, let's say we decide to punt this after 18 months, and you know we've spent $500,000 on improvements and we've increased the value by 200,000, then your net cost only becomes 300,000, which is a lot easier pill to swallow. And I guess, you know, when you looked at selling the building, what would somebody just you think somebody would buy the building and kind of keep it as is with, I mean, obviously there'd be some changes, but, or do you even know, did that even get talked about, or is that just so far down the line that who knows, right?
Well,
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
No, I mean, I don't want to be monopolizing, but I'll say a couple of things. We know that buildings this size, we know there's not a lot of inventory in the county. We know that we're probably priced at the 1.3, which is lower than the 1.7 you saw. So again, we think there's probably a market for selling it. The question is, who would be interested in buying it? I don't know. And the other kind of piece is, something's only worth what you can get for it.
Yeah.
So we'd have to put it on the market and see what we could get. But I feel like, you know, we'll be able to get back with you next month. And Scott, what did you have to add on that? Sorry.
That's okay. Thank you. There is some information in the appraisal about highest and best use, and if I'm remembering right, I'll go back and look at it and bring it back for next month. Office space was one of the potential uses for a buyer.
Yeah. So if they did office space, and they're still going to have to put in, sounds like some of these things up front, right? The ADA and the sprinkler system, I guess, right? Let's see, I kind of wonder on the sales revenues projections, are we seeing an increase or a decrease in what we're selling in what the Friends is bringing in as far as book sales? Because you look at all the book sales that have gone away in terms of borders and, you know, things like that, and I wonder if, you know, if the projections aren't too rosy that we're going to see 5 or 10% increases. Now it looks like they kind of level off at some point, but you know, can we continue to see that given what's going on, you know, Borders and Barnes and Noble, or, you know, they're not exactly growing. And I know that's a different market, but you know, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so rather than, and that's a really good question, and one we struggled with when you look at Barnes and Noble and Borders and what's gone through there. We looked at it from a different standpoint, which was the publishing industry and how much money the publishing industry is producing in physical books. And I think it's around, in the report, around $23 billion industry. We're not seeing a taper. I think it started at as highest as 25. We're not seeing a taper, and the predictions that the Gen Z and millennials would be reading completely ebooks has not proven out. I mean, we're still looking at maybe 13% of all readers who only read electronic, and we're still looking about 87 people who either read books or a hybrid, some electronic and some physical books. So we think that the book business is still a good and viable business. We also did a study of the bookstores, both selling used books and regular books in the business case. And within the community, there's a pretty robust book business. People still seem to be buying books, whether it's Rainy Day or the other bookstores, Half Price Books. We then kind of look to see, whether we were in close proximity to those, and at this location, and we weren't. We then looked at the Department of Labor stats, particularly with Lenexa, along with the Lenexa study, to think about how much does the average household spend on reading material, and I think it was about $110 annually. So there's no use putting a bookstore in a community that doesn't have disposable income. Whether our communities in the future will have disposable income is so up in the air. But we did think that there was a niche in the market where if you can buy a book on Amazon and you have disposable income, you'll just go ahead and buy it. But if your budget is a little tighter, then that's the niche that we're going after, and the Friends always has, which is we are putting affordable books for really anyone in this location. So if you want a book, even if your budget's tight, you'll be able to go in and buy and get a book and buy a book at that location. The other thing that we've kind of thought about looking at where they were getting revenue is in two areas. They got most of their revenue, kind of like all retail does at Christmas time. They got most of their revenue on the summer sizzling book sale and on internet sales. And so one of the things that we've challenged the Friends to look at was, can you rethink about how often or the frequency you do sales? Maybe you do them on a monthly basis, and that would garner you more money and more interest. So it may be like on Friday from noon until 9, all books are at 50% off, and you do that once a month. So that gives them the option. The other kind of option that they've never been able to do that Rainy Day has done successfully is do ticketed events. And so when you bring an author in and you can sell books, but you can also sell tickets to that, and they get the author talk in a book, kind of the Rainy Day model. And they've not had kind of a facility where that was possible. And this will allow them the flexibility to get into that kind of business if they wanted. Over.
I mean, I guess what I would like to see on, on page 10, when you have the expense return summary, because it's not just the opportunity cost of selling it of the 1.3, it's also the, the 6.5 million or the additional 5.26 million that you also have to just overcome that hurdle. And maybe we can still do it, but I think that just has to be included in that's kind of my opinion on that.
No, I totally agree. I totally agree that what I'm proposing is that we're really looking out of pocket at the worst case scenarios, the 457,000, and that in 18 months, we'll
Okay.
have a much better idea of like, yeah, this is going to go, and this is kind of what the revenue is going to look like, because we'll incrementally got there. But it's a great, I mean, it is a huge hurdle, and it's something that we've got to address.
Yeah. Does anybody else have anything before I add another question that's completely different? Nope. You do talk about meeting space. What kind of meeting space? I know that there has been concern, I think in the county, that there is a lack of meeting space. Are we talking like a 20-person room, a 50-person room, a 100-person room that we anticipate? Chris, looks like you're answering.
The existing meeting room there seats about 50 comfortably, and there are tables and chairs that can be used for smaller groups. It was used almost 1,100 times during the 2019 calendar year. That's about 87 times a month. So we know there's demand for it there at its existing size without doing another thing to it, but vacuuming it. It would be ready to serve potentially there.
Yeah, and the reason I ask is I'm just trying to, because if we're near a break even point, but we're also contributing to the community at large, then now that kind of can sway the opinion of, voting for it too. I think that's pretty much what I got.
So this is just informational. We want to give you kind of the month to be able to talk, think about it, come up with other questions, ask us to come back with other information. We're meeting with Commissioner Hanslick and Chairman Eilert, and then we've also asked Joe Waters to help us put together a study session for other commissioners to step through and really address these questions also. But we wanted to put a plan that was palatable and possible for you, and that we weren't asking you to expend millions of dollars, but with partnering. And there may be other options or other partners that we may be able to get, but at the moment we have the foundation. So yeah, please take a look at it. We will, if you want a copy of the latest updated business plan, we can get that to you. And I'm going to be sharing a copy with Commissioner Hanslick also.
Thank you.
Just before I move on to the next topic, are there any other questions concerning this topic? Okay, and seeing none, I'll move on to the next item, which is the date of the board retreat. Michaela's been awesome and sent out a doodle poll. The 3 dates that we have is October 21st, October 22nd, and November 17th. What's looking favorable for everyone is October 22nd. And so what I'm looking for today is a decision for us to go forward on set that date, and then we can work to bring our consultant and to help facilitate that.
John, before we talk about the date, in light of the comments at the beginning from one of our patrons, can you, just for anybody at home and for the record, give just a brief rundown of what the retreat is? Because if people are thinking we're heading to a resort or something for a weekend, that's not what we mean by retreat.
No, okay, I'm happy. Yeah, I'm happy to do it. We are definitely not going to a resort, though. The cold temperatures have me wishing that I was heading to a resort sometime. But so this is what goes on at the retreat. The first thing that does is we review our administrative regulatory manual, and that's all the policies and procedures.
And we don't do that anywhere interesting or fantastically luxurious. We do that where?
Well, we have done it. Previously, we've done it at Carmack, and we've also done it at Oak Park. So we do it at one of our locations in one of their meeting rooms. I think we've also done it at Leawood Pioneer. It runs from 3 o'clock until 7, I think is right, or it's at 4 until 7. It runs 3 to 4 hours in the late afternoon to early evening. Then it's not very exciting. We go through our review, our administrative regulatory manual. We review all our policies every 2 years, and they're staggered. So we're not doing all of them, but we do maybe sometimes 30 to 40. Sometimes there are no changes to those. Sometimes there are small changes, and sometimes there are large changes. The board reviews those, and then once those have been approved, they are then updated. We then go through and review the strategic plan and take a look at that and look at both outputs and outcomes, and to look at what we're doing as far as the board, that strategically where we are following these initiatives and that the board has set. Then each year we take a deeper dive than we would here into the capital projects. Basically, on the big picture, 50,000 square foot, reaffirming the priority or changing the priority of those projects that are going forward. Now, we're not changing the priority of those that are in motion, such as Antioch, but we do take a look at Corinth and Blue Valley, and depending on the partnerships or the opportunities, sometimes those priorities change. We may give updates on studies that we've done, and there may be a time in 2021 where we're kind of giving updates on maybe rural renewal initiatives. And then we talk about just general topics, which is generally operating for the library, what's going right. It's a chance for the board also to give feedback and comments on the way that we're presenting information, and also looking back at how the library is communicating, and are we updating the board in a timely fashion? Are we providing them the information that they need? Sometimes we have legal counsel come, and they, again, may go more deeper into a topic. Previous years, we've done lots of legal work around buildings, and sometimes legal counsel has come and talked a little about that. Sometimes they haven't. Just depends what's on the time horizon. We try to get through all that in 3 to 4 hours and let everyone go with kind of action items going forward or goals set. But basically, we're looking at policies, communication, strategy, and then how's the professional staff interfacing with the library board. It's not nail biting, and maybe seems very boring, but it is the work of the library and how we run as an organization, and how the library board has oversight on the work that we're doing. And sometimes the budget committee will report out if it has met, and give a report on how we are budgeting money and how we're expanding it.
Madam Chair, I'd like to move that we set the retreat date for October 22nd from 3 p.m. to 7 p.m.
I'm in favor of that. Do we need a motion for that, or do we just want to agree on it?
Works for me.
Did you say 3 to 7?
Yes.
That's fine with me, Randy Butcher.
I'm good.
David Sims, are you there?
Oh, yeah. The October 22nd, right?
Yes.
Yep, works.
And to location to be determined, or if we're going to do it by Zoom or whatever.
Yeah, I think we talked about this in general terms, and it was my understanding at that time that the board wanted to do this in person, just because of the logistics, but we will probably do it at somewhere where we can really socially distance, which probably is either at Antioch or at Central, which are our 2 largest meeting room spaces. And if that's still true, as we get closer to the date, we can make a decision on that, just because we don't know how COVID is going to act in the community, especially as we've had schools returning. We're not sure if we're going to experience a spike or not. if that meets with everyone's approval.
That's fine with me. Everybody's on board for the 22nd, right?
Yep, that's the date we needed, and we're good, and we've got the time set. And then finally, we've gone through the budget cycle. It was really good. The commission asked us, Dave and I, to come back and talk about some of the questions they had, but it moved forward. And as you have seen in the news, they rolled back the county's budget by $250,000, but left parks and libraries bill at the same level. And so that was a successful process. And we this year we put our information, our budgetary information, in a new format, and I think that provided a lot of key performance indicators for the commissioners to look at and have questions about. I want to ask Commissioner Hanslick, did you have anything that you wanted to add to this year's budget process, or any comment from the library's perspective?
Oh, thank you, Sean. I appreciate it. Well, this was an especially challenging year to do the budget because we really are kind of flying blind, not knowing what is going to happen next year in terms of revenue. As you saw in the library's budget, a lot of the motor vehicle revenue has been impacted. So I was really, I was pleased that at the very least, the proposed budget was to hold the mill levy, excuse me, steady between 2020 and 2021. And I was pleased that we were able to at least cut it back a little bit by $0.25 mil. So if there's any questions, feel free to contact me, and I'd be glad to give you more details about the budget. But thank you, Sean.
Thank you, Commissioner. That concludes the county librarian report.
All right. Next up is the consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Wayne Burke, I so move.
Do I have a second?
Fabian Shepherd, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, next up is the section number 6, items for board action. Is this where, Fred, you want to take over?
Yeah, yes, Madam Chair, that would be fine. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. You have before you some documents relating to capital finance. The long and short of it is that basically the purpose of these documents is to facilitate $6.275 million in capital improvements at Central. It's being done in the context of a series of financing documents where other library facilities are mentioned. But the purpose of this, and the only new money, is the $6.275 million at Central. There are a series of documents. The first is a resolution that you would adopt authorizing these improvements at Central. Then there are 2 documents that relate to the base lease between the Library Board and the Public Building Commission of Johnson County. I should say here for newer members that the Public Building Commission is a statutory creation. It's the Board of County Commissioners, but they have certain capital finance authority. And all of the library improvements in the last 20 years have been through the PBC. And this is no exception. It's worked out quite well. So those next 2 documents are an amendment to a base lease, and then we lease it back from the Johnson County Commissioners. There's a third supplemental trust indenture between the PBC and Security Bank of Kansas. The Library Board is not a party to that agreement, but is asked by bond counsel to approve it. So that's one document that will not actually be signed. And then the final document is the tax compliance agreement among the PBC, the Board of County Commissioners, and the library board. It's my understanding that the commission has had some preliminary discussions on this themselves, and I believe they'll be approving a set of documents relating to this financing next week. So I have submitted to staff 4 separate motions. I would prefer that, particularly on the first resolution. And then I thought there was one motion that could combine on the amendments to the amended and restated sublease. So I think with that by way of a background, I'll see if there are any questions. Any questions on that? If not, then Madam Chair, I think you're ready to take up the first motion on the resolution.
Okay, do we have a motion for the resolution?
Would you like for me to state it, Madam Chair, and then somebody could say so moved? Would that be helpful going through these?
I don't mind making the motion, Fred.
All right, thank you.
Fabian Shepherd, Madam Chair. I move that the library board approve the resolution authorizing the designing, constructing, equipping, and furnishing of improvements to the Central Resource Library, approving the issuance by the Public Building Commission of Johnson County, Kansas, of its lease purchase revenue bonds, Series 2020C, to pay the costs of such improvements, authorizing the execution and delivery of certain documents and the taking of certain other actions in connection therewith.
Thank you, Fabian. Do I have a second?
Second, Bethany Griffith.
Any more discussion on that? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Next, we have the First Amendment. Well, there's 2 combined. Someone want to make that motion?
Fabian Shepherd. I move that the library board approve First Amendment to First Amendment and restated base lease between the Board of Directors of the Johnson County Library and the Public Building Commission of Johnson County, Kansas, and First Amendment to First Amendment and restated sublease between Johnson County, Kansas and the Board of Directors of the Johnson County Library.
Do I have a second?
Go ahead, Bethany.
Second.
Any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Next, we have the third one for the third supplemental trust indenture.
I'll take some pressure off of Fabian.
Thank you.
Wayneberg. I move that the library board approve third supplemental trust indenture between the Public Building Commission of Johnson County, Kansas and Security Bank of Kansas as trustee.
Randy Butcher, second.
Any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. And then finally, Wayne, you want to do that one?
Sure. I move that the library board approve tax compliance agreement among Public Building Commission of Johnson County, Kansas, and the Board of Directors of the Johnson County Library.
Do I have a
Randy
second?
Butcher, second.
Any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Is there anything else that needs to come before the Johnson County Library Board at this time?
Madam Chair, just really quickly, I came on a little late because I'm in my office, but I want to let everyone know, just a little quick personal detail. Spent several days in Advent Hospital last week, and the reason was because on my way to work, I had blurred vision while driving and a little bit of vertigo, which is a weird thing to have happen while you're seated and operating a motor vehicle. We found out the source of that was that my blood pressure was through the roof. So I want to remind everyone to, if you feel or if you have a history in your family of hypertension, to monitor that blood pressure. If you've got medications, to take those daily. You can't miss any days. That's something that's Yeah, it's something you have to really stay on top of. The reason they call it the silent killer. It was a really big scare for me and my family, and I take that extremely seriously. I just wanted to put that out there for public consumption. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Oh, I'm happy everything came out all right. That's a very scary situation. Take care of yourself, Fabian.
Yep, we need you, Fabian, so take care.
And Donna, you know, it's a tough time with your moving your mother into a facility. I've been there, so I know what you're talking about.
Well, she's at home with us. It's my, yeah.
So she moved in
She's
with you.
living with us. I can't let her go to a facility right now. I just
Well, that's
can't.
even better.
So,
but still, it's hard. Anything else? Okay, then I just need a motion to adjourn.
Madam Chair, I move the library board be adjourned from this meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, everybody. Have a good month.